Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Anila, and I'm delighted to be here today representing MRSI as a management committee member. The Market Research Society of India is an autonomous, not for profit organization. We were established in 1988, uh, committed to driving excellence and professional standards in the market research and insights industry in India. At the outset, I do want to thank the Global Association SOMAR for creating this very unique platform and to help us celebrate our own day, the International Market Research Day, or as we're calling it now, the IMRD. The theme for IMRD 2026 is celebrating research. As you can imagine, it's a day that is a really seminal piece where we recognize the immense value, the impact, and the people behind market research and insights. It highlights how research drives informed decisions, fuels innovation, and creates a positive impact on society. It also brings together the global insights community uh, to celebrate achievements, to share knowledge, and to inspire the future of our profession. And with that, let me not stand between you and the panelists. I would like to hand over to my esteemed colleague and dear friend Pallavi. Pallavi, of course, is no stranger to all of you in the research industry. She has 25 years plus of market research leadership experience. She's very rich career spanning insights, analytics, strategic communication, and client engagement. Her cross functional expertise and industry stewardship has driven compelling research narratives that have shaped business impact and elevated collective knowledge. So over to you, Pallavi, now, and can't wait to see this very wonderful panel.
Thank you so much, Anila, for your kind words and for the introduction to what we are here for today. And welcome everyone to this special International Market Research Day panel discussion. The theme for today is Young Trailblazers, Powering Next Gen Thinking in Market Research. And today we are bringing together five exceptional young voices whom you see here who are really redefining how we understand, interpret, and apply consumer insights in our rapidly evolving world. Our panelists, as you will see, represent the perfect blend of art and science in modern research. So let me start by introducing them. We have Garvita Chauhan from the Global Qual team from Borderless Access. She represents the heart of human-centered research, and she listens beyond words. She turns everyday stories into insights that help brands connect authentically. And her work spans from sexual health to acid attack survivors, showing how research can be both commercially valuable and socially impactful. Aditya, Aditya Kumar is now an account manager at Kantar Bangalore, and he brings a unique perspective, having worked extensively on Middle East in the Middle East markets, and you'll hear some stories from there before returning to decode the Indian consumers. With over 4 years in quantitative research, his journey from borderless access to Kantar reflects a global local balance that defines modern research. Now, Garvita and Aditya both were winners at the community project, which was held by MRSI in 25-26, and they are going ahead into SUMA's Research Got Talent program as well. Two bright people here. Let me go further. Let me introduce Saachi. Saachi Asthana is joining us from Dragonfly. She spent the last 7 years here transforming cultural observations into strategic goal, as she says. With her MSc in social and cultural psychology from the London School of Economics, Saachi brings quite a unique lens to the heart of India. She was the runner up for MRSI's Golden Key Award for Best Researcher Under 30 and the winner at the Community Project in 2022. And she exemplifies how deep cultural immersions create breakthrough insights. Um, let's go move on to Priyanshi. Priyanshi Sankhla is from Kantar's quantitative research team. She's someone who sees patterns everywhere, from survey data to car number plates. Her philosophy of thriving in chaos while creating structure through data represents exactly this, the kind of agility that our industry is looking for. In just 5 years, she's built a reputation for turning complex data into clear strategic direction. And then we have Ira Thamman from Kantar IMRD, whose background in scientific psychology and literature from Ashoka University is shaping her pursuit of cultural foresight. And you will hear more about that from her. Ira doesn't just study consumer behavior, she tracks the signals that show us where this culture is heading, and just sits at the intersection of people, meaning, and what comes next. Really interesting panelists. Both Ira and Priyanshi were in the top three finalists of the Best Researcher Under 30 this year in the Golden Key Awards at MRSI. So today in our conversation, we're really going to strike down any misconceptions around Gen Zs. We're going to talk why the game in MR is so much more beyond just the call points divide, what the panelists here value in the MR industry, and how they're already shaping the next generation of thinking. So this panel discussion is going to last about 45-50 minutes. We hope to have enough time so that we can open it for a Q&A, and you can share your questions in the question box here on your screen. Um, so yeah, let's begin. Are you guys ready? All right. So let's start with just capturing a little bit of what your experience in a MR has been so far. Maybe you can all talk about one specific wow that you have experienced. It could be an insight, an innovative approach, or whatever you want to talk about. So Sashi, why don't we start with you?
Great, yeah. So, hi everyone, and thank you for having me a part of this panel. I joined market research as an industry about 9 years ago at the young age of 23. And overall, in my journey, what still surprises me is the fact that I'm still, constantly learning. Every project, every new category, every conversation, whether it's with a client, a consumer, or even my own team members, teaches me something new. But Pallavi, as you mentioned, one real, wow moment would be the cultural work that I've been doing over the last few years. So I've actually had the chance to, travel across various states in the country, so 6 to 7 states, and really understand the heartland of the country. And this is very interestingly not only been through consumer conversations, but through market visits, local city tours, expert interviews, and also by just decoding everyday life. And I really do feel that decoding the DNA of each state has been very special and very enriching for me, of course, because I've expanded my knowledge, but also because it's helped me look at every other category with a lot more context and not with a one size fits all kind of a lensing. So that's been very helpful for me in this field. And yeah, apart from that, of course, recognitions like being a researcher, being runner up for researcher under 30 and winning TCP have also been very, very validating.
You're wonderful. We'll deep dive a little more into your work. But could you move on? Priyanshi, you want to go next?
Yeah, so you know how they say that it's been a minute? Same way, the last 5 years have flown in what feels like mere 5 minutes, fully loaded with learnings, unlearnings, late nights, early mornings. But in this time, I've had the chance to work with some really high impact clients and also, build long and strong standing partnerships, which is something that I take great pride in. Alongside client work, I've stepped beyond the everyday by leading initiatives directed to build exciting work culture, representing youth at Canta's International Youth Day campaign, and most recently, as you mentioned, being named MRSI's best researcher as a finalist in MRSI's best researcher on under 30 category. So yeah, it's been a journey that has required consistency, resilience, and a lot of effort, but one that's been deeply rewarding because it has now shaped how I approach work, which is with true purpose and with deep passion.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So, Aditya, do you want to go next? Tell
Yeah,
us
hi
about
everyone.
your time in MR.
So, hello everyone. Thanks, Pallavi, for this opportunity. So, honestly speaking, when I was in college, I had no idea about what market research even was, zero idea. So, it was not something I had thought about or planned for at all. Okay. So, and then one day a company came in for a college session. They spoke for maybe around 20 minutes about the kind of problems you work on, the kind of people you speak to, the decision you actually get to influence. And I don't know how to explain it. Something just felt right. Yeah, I applied,
Just
got,
clicked.
yeah, just clicked. I applied, got selected, and that was the beginning. My initial years I was just sitting at my desk, looking at the brief, questionnaire, data, and understanding the process, how it will go. And I had some really good seniors around me in those days. Every time I was confused, which was quite often, honestly, they never made me feel like I was asking something stupid. Yeah, they sat with me, walked me through things, explained the reason behind everything. I really want to say thank you to them because whatever I know today, that base is because of them. But then there is a difference, right, between reading data about a market and actually going there. Then I got a chance to visit Saudi, and the only person I knew there was a local vendor. I had only spoken on calls. That was my full support system. Okay, I landed, and almost everyone around me was speaking Arabic, and that language I don't even know what is that. And I'm just standing there thinking, okay, figure this out. Slowly, that vendor became a real friend, and over my trips, Saudi just quietly became my second home. And recently, Garvita and I won the MRSI TCP 2526, as Pallavi said, for a study that really changed how I see this work. I'll come to that later. Thank you.
Wow, that's really wonderful. So you were thrown into the ocean and asked to swim,
Yeah,
learn how to
yeah,
swim, right? Wow,
correct.
great, fantastic. So Garvita, can you go next?
Yes, thank you so much. It's been 3 years for me in market research, and honestly, every single day still feels like a new adventure. What I love most about this industry is that sheer variety. One day you're deep in the world of FMCG, the next day you're decoding consumer behavior in home care or tech. It never gets monotonous, and at the heart of it you get to do something truly special, which is to listen to people. I love it. So their words, their expressions, their body language, there's a certain magic in that. I'll share a moment that came from a seafood study I did. And here's the irony: I'm a complete vegetarian. So there I was attending fieldwork sessions where consumers were passionately describing the aroma, the texture, the taste of seafood. And while my teammates were visibly struggling to hold back their cravings, I was sitting there perfectly composed, maybe the most objective person in the room at that time. But what struck me wasn't the food, obviously, it was the emotion, the way people's faces lit up, the stories they told, the memories tied to a simple meal. And then we took those stories, those very human, very real moments, and we flew to Dubai to present it to the client. So watching those consumer truths shape actual brand decisions in a boardroom in another country, that was the moment I truly felt the power of, research, and that what keeps me here, that we don't just collect data, we collect human truth. And I think that's pretty extraordinary.
That does sound extraordinary. You've had some amazing experiences.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Ira, let's hear from you.
I have only been in the market research industry for 1 year, unlike all the other panelists here. But in this 1 year, I've had the opportunity to work on numerous explorative qualitative studies, and that is my favorite part of my work. These are studies that have strategically shaped long term impact for businesses. And the fact that I've gotten this opportunity to be speaking here in this nascent stage of my career as a researcher is testament to the trust my team has endowed me with to work on complex briefs and then just build my intuitive muscle on top of that. And one such study that I was working for was where my team and I were working in the sexual health category, and we were trying to understand how the definition of masculinity is changing in a very high business potential state in India. And we wanted to use that information to inform our communication strategy to drive penetration for the brand. And since this topic is something I have very strong personal opinion about, it was crucial for me to keep my personal judgments and opinions in check. And there was this need to suspend the need to segregate the right and wrong. And considering the fact that this topic itself is so layered and complex in nature, it's a social agreement of gender dynamics. We decided to use semiotic frameworks to build hypotheses before we went to the field. This is a practice that tremendously helps us with gaining more nuanced insights during fieldwork. And I ended up using Hinge, which is a dating platform. And I used the platform to decode how men present themselves and express desires in the target state. And I found this emergent pattern that was confirmed by primary research. And this helped us with an understanding of the market that wouldn't have been possible without going beyond conventional sources of data. And this is specifically the study that got me nominated for Best Researcher Under 30 at GK7. And that was a reinforcement that I'm doing something right in my inquiry for meaningful insights. I think the experience across the study and the recognition itself was something that was the wow moment for me.
That's so wonderful. I really love the part about you building your hypothesis before you're going out to fieldwork and testing those out. So that's really one of the best practices. So that's wonderful. So I'm really impressed with how much you all have achieved, and the kind of work that you're doing is some of it is really path breaking, and it really makes us all very proud here at the in the research fraternity in India. And I also noticed that we have a very wide range of experience here with our panelists. We have from 1 year to yeah 9 years of experience. So maybe we can pick on that. And I would like to hear from some of you on how you think in your time in the industry the research and insight space is evolving. I mean, we know it's really evolving very rapidly because we've been here for donkey's years. But from all of you, it would be really great. How do you see this evolution, and what do you think you are bringing to this evolution? So I would open this. Who would want to go first? Garvita or Priyanshi? Let's start with Priyanshi.
Yes. So obviously the research space is evolving rapidly, especially on the tech side. But I would like to leave that topic for us to discuss later on because, in my view, the more meaningful shift is in the role of the researcher. The value is in moving away from execution alone and more and increasingly towards interpretation, bringing in the right context and also aiding in the final decision making process, right? Because we know that insights are no longer only expected to just report what happened. We are expected to help organizations think more clearly and make better decisions. So while we know that tools are evolving fast, right, my focus is and will always be on building strong fundamentals, bringing in that clarity of thought, and most importantly, to have a deep respect for the craft as well as for the people who actually turn that raw data into something that can be actionable, right? So that I believe is, that will continue to distinguish great research from the rest. And this also helps because if we really want to make market research, truly aspirational, letting young researchers see how insights have real world impact, that is
Hmm.
extremely crucial because that will guide in industry's evolution more meaningfully.
I really like the refocus that you're doing on the role of the researcher because, with all the new tech and everything, like you said, it's easy to get talking about that. But that's a really good point you brought us back to. Let's hear from some of the other panelists on this. Ira, would you like to comment?
Sure. I think I'm going to draw back focus to the tech aspect of it. It's just a question that
Right?
weighs so heavily on us today. And I think
Sure.
every other day we see a research study being conducted with methodologies we've never used before. And AI furthers its capabilities every few months. And then we're again tasked with reorienting our interactions with models, acclimatizing to its expanded depth of processing information. And our report writing, and data processing is usually limited to our internal company LLMs. But other than that, I frequently experiment with different ways of visualizing findings. And I also try to keep reading reports from behavioral science research, developmental research, and qualitative reports being produced in different parts of the world just to keep abreast of these novelties that are coming in terms of methodologies and ways of looking at data. And personally, there are a few things I use to just keep up with this evolution. I'm an avid user of this app called My Mind, which I try to use to save cross industry signals, and I also save some pieces from literature that call to me. And I hope that these signals might inform my narrative for research work someday. I also use this app called Obsidian, which I use to graphically map out how my thoughts speak to each other. And what often ends up happening is that my colleagues are intrigued by some of these practices and they come and speak to me with curiosity to learn more about them. Although I have exposure to a lot of these tools because I keep tinkering with them, and I try to keep utilizing this to evolve as a team. I'm also aware that there's some shortcoming in terms of the fact that I've had a very limited exposure to the industry, which means that I haven't had enough time to develop my intuitions as a researcher. And just in the effort to keep building on those, I always aim to keep asking my seniors as much wise as I can. And when they try to explain their thought processes about something, that tacit knowledge turns into something verbalized, and I can then use that to update how I think about the consumer. And that helps me adequately utilize the breadth of their experience in informing my own efforts. And this dialogue, I think, helps us all to evolve in times when each of our skill sets has something to teach the other person.
Wow, wonderful. So I'm taking notes. I'm going to go and check out Obsidian. But I really like the point of, you're aware that obviously you don't have enough experience and you're tapping into all the different multidisciplinary literature and example and signals, as you say, which is really fascinating. Maybe we'll deep dive a little more on that as well. So let's move on. Sachi, what do you think
Yeah,
as the
so
eldest on the panel?
yeah, so I'm going to talk as the eldest as well. So, like Priyanshi and Ira, of course, mentioned, AI is very top of mind. It's becoming very central to research. And what I have also observed, of course, in the last 2 years is that clients expect it. And of course, we as
Hmm.
organizations are also adopting it. We're using it, building our own tools as well. But again, because I'm, an oldie, a millennial, I obviously didn't enter, research in an AI first era. I've had to obviously consciously learn how to use it, adapt to it, adopt it. So I feel like I can see both sides quite clearly. While AI, of course, enhances speed and pattern identification, I do believe it cannot completely replace the human layer. And especially in a field like ours, which is fundamentally about people. So personally, for me, I think evolution is not just about learning how to use the tools and kind of adopting the tools, but how to balance it with stronger human interpretation. Because in a world, where of course AI is being used a lot of reports output can start to look very similar. And the real differentiation, I believe, actually comes from deeply knowing who your consumer is, who the people are, and how powerful you can actually bring that to life. So I try to maintain this human angle by going beyond just sharing a fancy PPT, but by also meeting clients, doing old school things, going presenting, doing workshops, sharing consumer anecdotes, stories, maybe videos from the fieldwork. So that's something which I like doing. And it's also important to
Right.
try not to over clean or oversimplify the data. Again, that's something which AI also tends to do. It does try to create a singular narrative. So but
Hmm.
human behavior, as we know, is messy, it is contradictory as well. And that's something I also try to consciously retain in my presentations and when I am speaking with clients.
I think that's wonderful because while I know all clients want AI, but they also want to hear all the direct, truths from the consumers and all the emotions and everything that clicks with them. So great, you're doing a great job. And now that you mentioned you are a millennial, so we have two millennials on this panel and three Gen Zs. And I want to just sort of address the whole Gen Z controversy. Not controversy, but there's enough out there about, Gen Zs are not hardworking and you guys are lazy, etc., etc. So I am not saying it. I am just what I want to bring to this discussion is that um, what do you I want you guys to talk about your view. And of course, let's start first with the millennials. And if you both, you and Garvita, have anything, Sachi and Garvita, have anything to say about Gen Zs, and then let's hear from the Gen Zs themselves. And then we can take a call on how lazy you guys are or not. Yeah. So Garvita, why don't you go first?
Yeah. Uh, so, as one of the millennial with Saachi on this panel, I feel that ours is a bridge generation. Honestly, I like to think of us like that. Because we grew up without smartphones, but we came of age with them. We remember the pre-internet world, but we also helped build the digital one. And I think that actually gives us, a rather unique lens on this industry. Um, Honestly, like a lot of people in research, it wasn't a planned choice for me either. I don't think many of us grew up saying that, I want to be a market researcher. I also stumbled into it and then I stayed and I started to like it. And what drew me in was something, as I mentioned earlier, it was the sheer variety of this work. But what kept me here was something much deeper. It was the realization that this profession
is at its core about human understanding. And as a millennial, our generation that grew up being told to, question things, to find meaning in work, to not just clock in and clock out. So that matters enormously to me. And now as we talk, there's a lot of conversation about Gen Z in workplace right now. And I see my Gen Z colleagues every day. And I would like to say this with a lot of clarity. A lot of what gets criticized about them, I actually admire, because they ask why before they say yes. They want work that means something, they won't pretend to be okay with things that aren't okay. And honestly, millennials wanted the same thing. We were just perhaps a little more nervous about saying it out loud. But here's where I think millennials and Gen Z sometimes differ in the workplace and specifically in research, because we millennials were trained, in a culture of perseverance through ambiguity. Research fieldwork running over time, we stay. Client wants a restructured deck at maybe 11 p.m., we open our laptop. Not because it's always right, but because we were shaped by that,
Yeah.
prove yourself culture kind of a thing. And I'll be very honest. I've also had moments where I've questioned whether that conditioning served me or is simply exhausting me. But what keeps me here, though, is something no other industry has quite offered me. And I've thought about this very carefully. It's the access to sectors, access to boardrooms, access to real human stories, and to decisions that actually shape brands and business. And as I mentioned earlier, I've sat in workshops in Dubai translating a vegetarian's observations about seafood into brand strategy. And where else does that happen? And I've had my seniors, I've had my mentors in this industry who taught me that great research isn't about elegant methodology; it's about intellectual honesty, and being willing to say that this data is telling us something very uncomfortable, and we need to say it anyway. So that kind of courage in thinking, I haven't seen it everywhere, and I've seen it here, and it shaped the kind of researcher I want to be. So as a millennial in MR, I'm here because this industry rewards curiosity, and millennials, for all the jokes on us, we're deeply, almost annoyingly curious people. So that's what I like about it.
I love that, how you look at research through your lens. It's really a wonderful picture that you have painted. And thanks for setting the thing right on Gen Zs as well. Sachi, do you want to also add on to this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I completely agree with Garvita on most of the things that she spoke about. And honestly, this is one of my new hobbies at work now. I just sit and observe the Gen Zs, and it's just so fascinating, how different they are from how we started, years back. So the one, really nice thing, refreshing thing about the Gen Zs is that they're so curious. I mean, they want to really learn everything. In fact, very recently, I was quite surprised when a youngster at work, asked if she could take time out to learn the basics of quantitative research, even though we are a qualitative agency. So that really goes to say how they want to kind of go beyond and learn new things. They're also very clear and vocal about what they want to work on. So, specific brands, categories, types of studies, etc. And in a way, I do feel that they are actively crafting their own learning journey instead of, just leaving it to chance or come their way. So that is also something which I have observed. And overall, I think the biggest shift is just how they, turn up, and how, and their overall attitude. So they are confident, they articulate what they want. As Garvita mentioned, they're not afraid to kind of, set boundaries or even push back. So, as Garvita mentioned, we were, busy saying yes, learning on the job, but they kind of, have come in knowing what they want, and they're okay to kind of say it and, ask for it. And honestly, I'll admit that is something I am learning from the Gen Zs at work.
Yeah, that really sounds wonderful. It is a big change, like you guys have also highlighted. We've been used to just following, what was taught to us. But yes, it's a very refreshing lens again. So let's hear from the Gen Zs. So who wants to go first? Priyanshi, do you want to add something to this discussion?
Yeah, so As a Gen Z, I think somewhere I agree with Garvita because I have been briefed by a client at 7:30 p.m. on a Friday night about a requirement which was expected to be delivered 9:30 a.m. on Monday morning. But luckily I had my managers to rescue, and we were able to manage expectations. So I think that is what is, keeping me here, and that is what has truly shaped my journey, because my managers and mentors have taken the time out to patiently guide me through and around the world of market research. As they say, talent recognizes talent, and I genuinely feel and believe that they recognized my spark before I fully did, or I even could understand what was it. So they saw that curiosity, they nurtured it, and helped channel it into strong fundamentals. Over time, I feel that that foundation has enabled me to deliver impactful work and do some groundbreaking work every now and then. So I definitely, hope to carry the same intent forward, to be able to recognize potential early, to be able to, nurture curiosity, also help others grow the same in with the same patience and belief that was once extended towards me.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I like about how you have reiterated that the curiosity factor remains. Garvita
Yes.
spoke about how the millennials are annoyingly curious, but then so do the Gen Zs seem to be. And I think, in fact, it's a core of our industry, frankly. All of us were also very, very curious folks. That is one thing that continues. Aditya, would you like to add something to this
Yeah,
discussion? Yeah?
I heard everyone, and the things people say about Gen Z are restless, impatient,
Hmm.
and hard to retain, right? I get why people feel that way. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it is all wrong. Okay, but I think the real thing is just we want to know why this project, why this method,
Hmm.
where does this go? That is honestly all it is, right? For me, I
Hmm.
recently moved to Kantar, India. 4 years I was working with Borderless access and only on Middle East markets, right?
Hmm.
And now I am learning India from scratch. Completely different consumers to understand, different cultures, different way of thinking all together. So shifting is very big changes. Like it's hard to digest for now, but I'm learning it, and that is
Yeah.
what is keeping me here. The industry giving me something new. I have never had the same year twice, right? For someone like me, that is more than enough. Yeah,
That's that's great. So you're getting new opportunities. You actually got a new market to work on,
correct,
and I'm
correct.
sure your learning curve is quite steep.
Yes,
So
yes.
all the best on that.
Thank
I think I want to move on now to you know just ending this whole Gen Z thing with I do you really see all this as a cultural misfit? Because that is another term that is thrown out there. They don't fit in the culture of the MR agencies and the way they have been working, and therefore there is all these troubles that we've been thinking of. Do you feel that today's workplaces are not for you? How can we make sure that Gen Zs thrive at work in MR. And MR also thrives with all the wonderful, thoughts and the way you guys are already doing such great work and thinking and, more unconventional and more bold in your own way. So what do you think? How can Gen Zs thrive in this industry? So Ira,
So,
would you like to go first?
I
Priyanshi, you want to
think
go first? Go ahead. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay. You used a really interesting term that was misfit. So
Yeah.
what I feel what sometimes gets labeled as misfit is actually Gen Z questioning long held assumptions, that long hours equal commitment, presence equals productivity, or that growth must follow a very fixed path. Or even that experience alone can define skill, right? So we're just I feel that we're just ready to evolve from this thought process. From what I've seen in research and in my own experience, frankly, Gen Z is deeply invested in doing good work, but with clarity, with purpose, and most importantly, respect for time. Right? We value accountability at work as well as we value our own personal endeavors. Okay, but we also believe that impactful work needs space, needs focus, needs collaboration, and not just burnout.
Wow. Yeah, that's really great. I liked how you mentioned those long hours is not equal to commitment and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's the actual impact that gets created and the actual work that gets done. And good, you've also brought out that you have your own personal endeavors where you also want to focus. I'm sure that can be a conversation for another time. I'm sure you guys are all busy and have another side to yourselves apart from being market researchers. But let's hear from Ira now.
I think I completely agree with what Priyanshi said, and what I might say might just overlap with whatever she's saying, because I feel like Gen Zs have grown up prioritizing efficiency over everything else. So these assumptions tend to get questioned by us, and we've also noted that some rules and norms, they just serve nobody. Having five alignment meetings, not voicing our opinion just to respect hierarchy, or wasting time commuting to work on days when it actually needs to be utilized elsewhere. This is actually pointless. And specifically in MR, I have come to realize that research is a very creative endeavor. It's an activity that requires an artistic intuition to be able to tell stories of human beings, and this ability to reach something beyond what is articulated, I think, requires hours of sifting through and sitting with data. And personally, for me, my work benefits from asynchronous working, and I know a lot of my peers who would tend to agree. And I think both the Gen Z workforce and the MR industry would really benefit if we could just do away with terms like industry standards and stop abiding by those that do not make sense, and instead focus on co-creating an industry that values good work over everything else.
Wow, those are some really good points. I hope the powers that be are listening because you have really pointed out at why Gen Zs might be shunning some of the rules that get laid out uh, in the workplace these days. So wow, that's great. Aditya, do you want to add something to this discussion?
Yes, yes. I think misfit. I think that that is quite a strong word actually. Correct. See, when you are a new and you don't understand something, there are two ways. Either someone explains it to you, or you go and figure it out yourself. Right. Gen Z can do both. We are more
Hmm.
flexible than people give us credit for, but that flexibility does not always get noticed. I think honestly, the real thing is very simple. Show us what our work is doing, show us the decision it changed, the thing it affected. And we don't need big talks or motivation sessions. We just need to see that what we did actually mattered somewhere. When that
Hmm.
connection is clear between our work and the outcome, I don't think Gen Z will go anywhere, will show up completely.
That's really great. So the work connection between the work and the outcome. And I think what you are saying is that why are we doing something? Is there a
Yes,
better way of doing it? More efficiency, like you said. Do we really have to, show that we are working for this long or this much time or, we
right,
have this much experience? Can we just get down to what really needs to get done? And so you are expecting far more clarity from the ecosystem around you on the
correct,
work that you're producing and to see the direct impact that it's having. And then it
yeah,
makes you happy. Then you feel like you've done great work.
great work,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's really really nice. This was a great discussion. I think we have cracked it on the Gen Z debate for now. Let's move on to I want you all to bring in some of the exciting work and interesting work that you have done. Some of you had talked about different projects that you worked on, but now I want you to elaborate on it and dazzle all of us with stuff that you have been doing, and especially we want to see the next gen thinking and how you've been applying your thinking to work. So for this, Sachi, would you like to start?
Sure, absolutely. So, if I think back, one of the most exciting pieces of work I've done recently has been to decode the Indian luxury consumer for various brands looking to enter India. And through the research, what actually stood out for me is that, while the Indian luxury consumer may look very, global, hep on the outside, and could also be a little intimidating and alienating, their motivations are actually very deeply Indian and surprisingly timeless. So through these studies, when we kind of dug deeper, we saw certain patterns emerging, and very, very interestingly, these patterns actually mirrored archetypes from the Mahabharata, which is a 7,000-year-old Indian epic. And what we actually found out is that when it comes to luxury, the same tensions still exist. I mean, they're still linked to display, status, legacy, insecurities, one's position in the social order. So all those are pretty much constants, but how they kind of manifest and show up obviously differ, basis different Indian consumers. So for some, of course, luxury is about the finer things in life, a lot like Krishna. For some, luxury is about achieving a benchmark like Arjun. For some, luxury is about being seen, being envied like Duryodhan. And for others, luxury is also a lot about access and social approval like Karn. So actually, through this, I found this really fascinating. The fact that luxury, which is such a modern and such an aspirational category, can actually be studied and understood through a 7,000-year-old lens, and that really goes to show how deeply culture actually impacts consumer behavior, no matter the category.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I'm going to go back and think more about Karan and Arjun and Krishna and Duryodhan. Okay, wow. That was really fascinating how you made those connections. So that's great. Who would like to go next to talk about their work? Aditya?
The project, like I'm most proud in my career, is has nothing to do about the sample size or data tables. Okay, so thanks to Garvita and me, I worked on a study called Life After Burn, for which we won award, and research on acid attack survivors in India. When I first heard about it, I honestly did not fully understand what we are getting into. Okay, but when we actually started the journey, when we sat with these women and heard their story, I was just not prepared for what I saw. These are women who have been through something I cannot even tell like how they were feeling. But what came through was not only pain; it was a strength, real strength. Dreams still there, plans still alive, a will to keep going that was honestly difficult to sit from without feeling something yourself. Okay, and our challenge was how do we show this in a research report without making it feel like just number on a page, just data on a page. How do we make the person reading it feel like what we felt there in that room? That became our real problem to solve. But more than that award or that winning, this study told me that research done with care is never cold. Okay, it gives real people a real voice, and this is the kind of work I want to keep doing. Yeah,
Wow, that really sounds like an amazing experience that you've had. A very, very sensitive topic through and through, right from the beginning, I'm sure, to the end, where you would have brought this all to life
yeah.
for your clients. Really, really amazing. Let's hear also from Ira.
Think beyond what we do in the insight space, my interest is particularly in this methodology. It's actually now become an entire field in itself, and it's called strategic foresight. It's an approach that is much more attuned to uncertainty being an ever present force that influences cultures. And instead of focusing on understanding what is happening in the present and in the majority, it traces signals across industries and at the fringe of society to provide institutions and brands with this ability to create sound scenarios for the future, not just like probabilities, but possibilities of plausible and preferable futures. At the end of the day, I think the future will emerge from collective consciousness of those who live in the present. And this field tries to make heavy use of systems thinking frameworks and backcasting to sort of take steps to make a preferable future the actual reality. I've often noticed that there's this psychological barriers in decision makers to accept the amount of uncertainty they're functioning under, especially in the current scenario. And this way of conducting research to me appears much more fruitful in the long term rather than living with a false sense of certainty that we might try to convince ourselves of if we just rely on primary research work itself.
But fantastic. So, Ira, maybe one day we can sit down. I would love to hear more about strategic foresight. Yes. All right, great. So, we have just heard from you all of the work that you're doing sounds really intense. So I want to just move on and ask you guys, is it all work and no play for all of you? Or are you also having fun while at work? I'm sure, in your travels or in your client meetings and in your everyday work, there would be some fun elements or, some embarrassing elements or, where you face something surprising. We would also love to hear that side of the work that you do. And maybe, Garvita, you can start and tell us something interesting.
Yes, there's one that's coming at the top of my mind. It's from my early years in research,
Mhm.
and it's a story about how Simple Language Gap nearly launched a weight loss cooking oil. So what happened is
Right.
we were conducting focus groups in a smaller town, Hindi-speaking respondents, and the client was a large FMCG brand, and their whole team had come to watch the fieldwork. All were sitting behind that. There's a one-way mirror with their notebooks, refreshments. Everything was good. Discussion was going beautifully. And then we were exploring perceptions of a cooking oil. So, the key territories the brand usually see, the concept of lightness, so light on the stomach, easy digestion, doesn't feel heavy after me, that kind of communication that these oil brands do. So what happened? Respondents were connecting it well, and then one respondent said something like, I'll say it in Hindi. They quote unquote, ये तेल खाने के बाद पेट में भारी नहीं लगता, एकदम हल्का फील होता है. Meaning it doesn't feel heavy on the stomach, it feels very light. And nice, exactly what the brand wanted to hear. So now our translator in the back room was doing live translation for the client team. And somewhere between halka feel hota hai on the stomach, the English translation it became to respondents feel this oil help them lose weight. Okay, and
Oh my God.
I was in the front room and I was doing, completely unaware of this. Meanwhile, behind the mirror, I found out later there was absolute chaos of excitement, and we finished the groups and we walk into the back room for the debrief, and the client team looks at us with this energy in their eyes, and the brand manager says, so weight loss positioning, huh? We had no idea consumers were seeing it that way. So that's a completely new insight. Can we explore this further? And I remember I was just standing there for a second thinking weight loss. I mean, which groups were they watching? And then honestly, it took us very careful 10-15 minutes conversation to explain them that halka meant light on digestion. It was not a slimming product. And you won't believe, you could physically see the excitement leaving the room. And that day I learned that, you should always have someone bilingual in the back room,
Hmm.
and never let a client get too attached to an insight before the debrief. It was hilarious. I'm telling you.
It does sound really funny and a bit dangerous too. Good you
Yeah.
caught it in time, and good luck for stopping clients from making their insight takeaways very early. There we've all been through this.
Yeah.
But yes, I think what you say is correct that because it will ultimately be your interpretation of and of the whole study and then presentation of the findings. But this was quite funny. Sachi, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So I think one of my most memorable and slightly awkward field experiences was during a romance and love study, and this was happening in Unnao, which is a small city in Uttar Pradesh. So we were doing group discussions with older women, and given the topic which was around love, romance, relationship with your husband, etc., I thought they would be a little shy, they would be coy, they might hold back a little. But within 10 to 15 minutes, the conversation went from safe to very honest and very bold very quickly. So these girls, these women actually were very, open about discussing their married life and even their sexual life for that matter. They spoke about what they like, what they don't like, what they expect their husband to do, what they themselves, take charge of. And these were
Wow.
things I was honestly quite, surprised. And I didn't actually expect women from small towns to share so openly and so comfortably. And honestly, this was not something I was prepared to moderate that day. So yeah, that was a little awkward. And then to balance that out, I've also had some moments which have been quite embarrassing and humbling as well. So I remember during one of my first product testing studies many years ago, I was so nervous and I was so focused on trying to get everything right that I actually forgot to show the product itself. So it was a product testing study, and that's something which I completely goofed up. So yeah, I think from unexpected, bold conversations in small town India to forgetting the most hygiene and basic things, I think we've all had our oops moments, and that's what I think makes research and the job so much fun.
Yeah, and you learn so much, and then it gives you so many things to laugh about as you reminisce
Stressful and weird in the
about your.
moment, in hindsight, all good.
Yeah, sure. Wonderful. Do you have something for us, Aditya, from your
So
work
uh,
experience till now?
fun during the field work time. Yeah, so this is
Hmm.
the topic for me now. So I want to say something from my Saudi trip that still makes me smile when I think about it. I was
Hmm.
there during Ramadan for field work, okay. And before I went, nobody really told me what Ramadan on the ground actually feels like in Saudi. During the day, everything is shops, restaurants, streets are empty, very quiet. I was just sitting in the in the hotel, and not knowing what to do with myself. And then evening comes, and it is like completely different place. Everything opens up, people are out, food everywhere, so much energy. I was completely not expecting that. So before our CLT session started that night, my local field team, they called me and said, come join us for iftar. That is when they break their fast. And so there I am, sitting with them in Saudi, everyone talking in Arabic, laughing, eating, enjoying. I understand maybe nothing of what they were saying about me, but they kept putting food on my plate, checking if I was okay, including me in everything, everywhere. I could not follow a word. That is and that is when I realized that these people are not just my field team anymore. These are like my family, my friends there for in Saudi Arabia. After iftar, we went to the CLT. It ran past midnight. Respondents were fresh, energetic, full there. Back in India, we would be done by 7 p.m. Over there, the night was just started. I went alone and came back with the real friendship and an understanding of what market no data from India could have given me. And honestly speaking, nobody tells you in college that market research will one day land you at the iftar table. But here we are. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. What a wonderful immersion into that warm, festive moment and so much camaraderie. What a great experience you had. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we are nearing the end. We can quickly go over, I think we should just do a quick roundup of AI. We are talking about how AI is really changing the market research landscape and it will continue to do so. But a quick word from all of you, maybe around the table, about your opinions on AI, maybe shortcomings or the learnings or the good experiences that you've had with AI and tech. And maybe Priyanshi, you can start.
Yeah, so I think for me, AI works best when it's treated like, a very sharp intern or a very good hire. Somebody who's great at processing, organizing, and doing all the surface level, like, ideas and responsibilities. But they still need a lot of context, guidance, and, a very careful review at the end. So I believe that human judgment is irreplaceable and is extremely essential to decide what truly matters and what is just noise, right? And believe me, I love AI because it's brilliant for the first draft. It just makes your life easier. But like, with any intern, it still needs a manager, someone who can question. Yeah, okay, this was good content, but where is the proof? Where is the source? Show me the source. So it needs to be questioned is otherwise brilliant, amazing for the first draft.
Okay, great. That's a good viewpoint. Ira, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, I think I just want to comment on this very dominant perspective that I've actually heard from a lot of senior leaders in a lot of industries, which is that AI is like all other technologies and will only replace jobs of those who do not learn how to work with it. And I think deeper within, we all know that efforts to build an intelligence that resembles human beings is not comparable to previous revolutions like the internet revolution or industrialization. I think when the world's largest intelligence companies orient their efforts to build AGI and world models, we cannot function with this assumption that the evolution of this technology is something we can grasp basis its current capabilities. And it thus becomes very important for us to ask questions about what the human mind contributes that is beyond any vector space to map. And I think human consciousness is not yet understood completely, even by physics itself, which makes it a very challenging proposition to be replicated in artificial models. I think, particularly for market research, this means that we need to dissuade the spread of technologies like synthetic consumers and AI interviewers without accounting for the very limited scope they offer in getting to the crux of human emotions, dreams, anxieties, and fears. And I think the lived experience of being a conscious entity lies at the heart of our practice. AI does have tremendous potential in sifting through vast data sets and pattern matching across diverse knowledge bases. But to tune that output to match the depth of human experience, I think that is something only human beings should be asked to do.
A really great viewpoint, and I think this is coming from your strategic foresight perspective. So well done. It was great to hear that perspective. Aditya, do you also want to add to this?
Uh, yes, I just want to tell that in quant we always says that garbage in, garbage out, right? But AI changes this little. Now it's garbage in and a very polished, very confident output coming out the other side. And that is where it gets a bit dangerous. Because if you don't go back and check the data yourself, you will end up presenting a very beautiful wrong answers to your client, right? So my honest take is use AI. It is a good tool. I'm not against it at all, but please still read your own data. Don't trust the output just because it looks beautiful, nice. That's
Well said. Well said. I think we all feel the same way, and just end-to-end AI outputs are just, it could be garbage in, garbage out, like you said. So yeah, I think point well made. Garvita, would you like to quickly add your perspective?
Yeah, I completely agree with all my co people who have joined, because when I when I first ChatGPT burst onto my screen, my first reaction wasn't excitement. Honestly, it was mild panic. That quiet moment of wait, can this replace what I do? And I agree with all of you. AI has been a tremendous gift for most of the laborious part of the research, transcription, and then I personally use it for building discussion guides just to see that am I leading the respondents here, and of course uh, report summarizing, meeting deadlines, so everything, it's just made faster and in many ways sharper. But as we were speaking, it's a big but that we get swept up in the excitement and we don't talk about the shortcomings. And it cannot sit in a room with a human being, and for qualitative researchers that room is everything. you know
Hmm.
it and I heard and I read it somewhere. It's a very nice term that I read. It's called confident wrongness. That AI sounds extremely sure about things that are subtly off. So fluent, well structured content, but the nuance is lost, content is missing. So if a junior researcher or client reads that without questioning it, a flawed insight drives a brand decision, right? That's not a small problem. And as Aditya said, it's only AI is only as good as thinking we put into it. As we said, garbage in, garbage out. So a weak discussion guide, lazy briefs, AI won't rescue us. It'll just produce a very polished version of confused thinking. So this is what I have learned with all of us, that we have to be curious about AI, not afraid of it. We have to be rigorous with it and not lazy, and always be more interested in the human sitting across from you than the tool sitting in our laptop. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's quite sums it up for us. And I would just like to end with a quick run through from all of you, if you could, you know, what would you like the industry to hear your own perspective? What would you like to end with? And since we are running out of time, if you guys could do a quick one, and let me know who wants to go first. Your parting shots.
Yeah, so I can, possibly go first. So,
Sure.
I definitely, of course, want to acknowledge and highlight the great work that ESOMAR and MRSI are doing in bringing the entire research fraternity together. It's wonderful. And yeah, of course, big round of
Yeah.
applause for the entire team who's put this entire session together and for just creating spaces and platforms to connect and to learn from one another. And I do believe now the next step is actually for the leadership to take this forward and to really leverage these platforms and encourage the researchers, especially the younger ones in the team, to actually go beyond just BAU, business as usual, and actively participate in all the events, all the programs which MRSI and ESOMAR meticulously put together. And I truly believe that when you feel a part of a community, the profession becomes far more exciting and far more inspiring, and you really grow as a professional when you kind of interact with people from different organizations. So yeah, those are my parting thoughts.
That's really wonderful. I want to just call out because I think over the years we have seen how, at least in India, MRSI and also now SMR events and SMR, papers and connects are also brought to India. And I think what you have said is right. As I myself have gotten more involved, the whole industry seems brighter because you have so much to share with your peers, your colleagues, your seniors, juniors, everyone comes together. So that's a great point, Sachi. Who would like to go next?
I actually just have 2 points to add. It's just a sum up from whatever I've already said and building on top of what Sachi did mention earlier. I think the first
Mm-hmm.
thing we all need to do is become interdisciplinary readers. I think all information is entangled with each other. These distinctions between qual and quant, this industry versus that industry, I think they're all made up. It's just a way of organizing complex information. At the end of the day, everything is interconnected, and we need to really recognize that and sort of draw signals across industries, across spaces, across different types of people. And I think the second thing is to understand that this need for this linear narrative to decomplexify these insights, which sits so much at the heart of what clients demand from us, is something we need to counter. We cannot get rid of contradictions. I think contradictions are the spaces where we find meaningful insights that can scale to very long term strategies. And I think although we can simplify the language and communicate them in ways that can travel across boardrooms, it is important for us to at least give ourselves the credit that our information is complex enough to be presented with that complexity.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea because there is definitely complexity when you're dealing with human beings. And I like your simplify the message, but not the language in which you're conveying all your findings and your recommendations. That's great. So maybe we'll have one more comment. Priyanshi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, yes. So I think I would more want to touch upon the evolution part of market research because I think that
Hmm.
is the future. Overall, like the future of market research isn't just about better tools, right? It's more about better thinking. Like technology may change how research is done, and it will. We are seeing that change. But it is people who decide why it matters, right? So if we stay focused on the impact and the purpose, this evolution will definitely move in the right direction. That's all.
Wonderful. Again, bringing our focus back. I will quickly jump into, we are already 3 minutes over time, but I do want to take a couple of questions. So if the audience is still with me, maybe I can pick up Aditya. So I want to ask you, and there is a couple of questions which are around this. Having worked in both the Middle East and the Indian markets, what would be the one key learning from each market that you bring out that all researchers could benefit from? Can you pick up
Yeah,
something that you've learned from both the markets? Go ahead.
yeah. So two different market, two different learning. So Middle East market taught me that understand the culture first, data comes second. Without that, you'll always miss something important in the learning in the report. India taught me never assume anything. This market will surprise you in your every single point of time, and that actually makes you a better researcher. Two very different markets, but both taught me the same thing in the end: stay curious and stay humble. That's
That's wonderful. Those are really great learnings. And again, bringing back to what all of us as researchers need to be doing. Uh, Priyanshi, there's a question about you mentioned that you were involved in the work culture initiatives at your workplace, and you have built long-standing client partnerships. So, what is the one change you'd like to see in how the industry develops and retains young talent?
So I believe young talent stays when they can see that their work makes a difference, right? If we consistently show how their analysis feeds into real decisions and real impact, it shifts the mindset from, I'm just doing a task to I am contributing to something bigger, right? So that
Hmm.
sense of purpose is a very powerful retention lever. So simple things, just like bringing juniors into client discussions, asking them to defend a point of view, letting them, lead small discussions early on. So those moments,
Hmm.
I think, build confidence far more than any formal program, and which helps retain, the young researchers into the industry.
So that's really wonderful. I just loved chatting with you guys so much, and I think that we can go on and on. But maybe we can close the session here for now. Thank you for answering all the questions. Just to summarize, I think we have really brought out a lot of points. I've just made some notes. I love to hear how all of you are literally, taking, you talk about research like an adventure, and how you're learning things, how you're using this, that, and the other. There were talks of AI, which is not replacing humans, and AI is like a sharp intern, is something I think Priyanshi you said, which makes us all a little reassured that market research is in safe hands. We also talked about the core of market research, the curiosity stays intact, the human understanding, which is at the core. And the role of researcher is essentially to continue and to hone those skills while using technology, while using AI, yes, but keeping the focus on that. And I also love the whole Gen Z discussion where I think we highlighted that the way Gen Zs are looking at work is uh, it's literally about, do we really need to do this? So about efficiencies, I think Ira had used that word. Also, that you need to know why you are doing whatever you're doing. Once you have that clarity, you are all committed, and you're accountable. You are also more adaptable and flexible than people think, which is great. And you really want to see the impact that your work is producing, which really is what makes you happy, and it's really something that is keeping you here. So I think purpose-driven research with authentic impact is something that is really keeping the younger Gen Zs and millennials uh, in market research. And I really liked all the new perspective that you brought in into how market research can become a more attractive industry, and how it is already something that should be aspired for, because all of you have pointed out uh, great reasons why you are still here, even though some of you just kind of landed in here. I think many of us did that, but it's keeping you here, and that is wonderful. So, these points collectively are showing how this next generation is redefining market research. It's not really a rejection of traditional methods, but it's really it's through a thoughtful evolution that combines this whole technological capability with deep human understanding, and all driven by a clear sense of purpose. And like I said, the future seems bright. It seems in great hands. And thank you all so much for really being here on this panel and talking to us through this. And I hope the audience really enjoyed this conversation. I would like to thank people who have worked behind the scenes for this. Nitin Kamath, who's the president MRSI, Anila Vinayak, she's the chair IMRD International Market Research Day, and she has brought together all the panelists across all the different panel discussions that we're having. Chandan Mukherjee, who's played a wonderful advisory role in putting all of this together and curating the sessions. And of course, last but not the least, the MRSI Managing Committee. Thank you so much for giving all of us this opportunity to be here on the stage and bringing forth how these young market researchers in India are really shining and putting their thinking into the field. And that's it. That's a wrap from all of us. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.